Jungles are extraordinary places, yet they cover less than 7% of the Earth's surface and are disappearing, at a devastating rate of 12 million hectares each year. Tropical forests are home to roughly 50% of all living things on Earth, so of course these jungles still hold their secrets. There are creatures we have yet to discover, vast expanses of dense landscapes yet to be explored, tribes yet to be documented, and ancient treasures buried underground. Let's look at some of the mysteries that have been discovered in the dense jungle. The spheres of Costa Rica. Costa Rica may be famous for many reasons, but you may not know that it is also popular for having a large collection of almost perfectly round stones. To learn more about these stone spheres that can be found all over the Costa Rican landscape, we must go back to the 1930s. At that time, the United Fruit Company was looking for new land to start its banana plantation, which was located in western Costa Rica, near the Pacific Ocean. But when the workers began to clear the dense jungles, they found something strange: stone spheres. It doesn't sound too strange, but let us explain it. Some were only a few inches in diameter, but others were huge. In fact, the largest spheres measured up to 2 meters in diameter and weighed up to 16 tons. But where do these spheres come from, or do they even come from this world? It was obvious that these spheres were man-made because the rocks did not exist in such uniform shapes. The locals quickly began to wonder, and many myths developed to explain the stone spheres. For example, some believe that they were brought by aliens. Others believe that they were related to the lost continent of Atlantis. The scientific study of the stones began in the early 1940s. Since then, around 300 stone spheres have been found throughout the country. Although many of the stones are not perfectly round, they are surprisingly smooth, and scientific measurements revealed that many of them were close to perfect spheres. But the most difficult question to answer is why these stones were made and what their purpose was. Nobody knows for sure. Eels hunt in packs. Electric eels emerge from the riverbeds of South America in the Amazon rainforest to attack their prey with up to 860 volts of electricity, enough to kill a person. Now, scientists have revealed that these snake-like fish don't always hunt alone. In fact, they hunt in packs similar to wolves, killer whales, and some species of tuna. This finding, the first among electric eels, is about to launch new studies to investigate when this social predation among animals evolved. Douglas Bastos, a biologist at the National Institute for Research in the Amazon, who first observed a group attack in 2012, was shocked. The eels, which can grow as large as a broom and weigh up to 20 kilograms, typically hunt alone at night, targeting individual resting fish. He noted that this behavior is not common, not just for freshwater fish, but especially for electric eels. Bastos observed the attack on an expedition while searching for endangered marine creatures in northern Brazil. 2 years later, he returned for a closer look, camping alone in the middle of the Amazon, 5 days by boat from the nearest city, Tef. He filmed hundreds of electric eels in groups of 10 repeatedly attacking small tetra fish in the Urairi River, a tributary of the Amazon River in northern Brazil. That must have been quite a show. The Nazi hideout, a mysterious place found in the Teucro National Park, in the Misiones province of Argentina. This secret shelter, believed to have been used during World War II, was discovered in 2015 by a team of archaeologists who examined 3 ruined buildings in the Argentine jungle. Among the artifacts discovered there were a porcelain plate labeled "Made in Germany" and 5 Nazi-era German coins. According to the expedition team leader, Daniel Shavelson, this small group of buildings was one of the many sites looted by the Nazis during World War II. The Nazis were working on a cover-up project to provide safe havens for top leaders if things went wrong. As a result, they built these inaccessible sites in the middle of deserts, mountains, cliffs, or in the middle of jungles, like the one the researchers discovered. The buildings were clearly designed with safety in mind, with some walls measuring up to 10 feet thick. Have they ever been used? They say that it is very unlikely, and the reason is very, very doubtful. The then president of Argentina, Juan Perón, had an open-door policy that allowed Nazis to resettle in the country. Archaeologists point out that if Adolf Hitler, the man who engineered the Holocaust, was allowed to live happily and freely in Buenos Aires, the chances of other leaders opting for life in the jungle were pretty slim. The Panamanian golden frog. Finding a frog in the jungle may not seem unusual, but the Panamanian golden frog is quite special, according to The Guardian. The world was first introduced to the little golden frog in the 2006 documentary The Frog. Not only was she poisonous, but she also had a clever way of communicating through body language. Researchers filming the frogs for the BBC found that the areas where the frogs lived in mountain streams and deep in the jungle were extremely noisy. Therefore, these little ones developed a complex system of waving their arms, moving their legs and tapping their feet to communicate. Isn't that cool? Unfortunately, according to the Smithsonian, they are critically endangered. As the BBC filmed, the spread of a chytrid fungus was decimating frog populations in the area. Fortunately, the researchers were able to save a small number of the agitated little frogs, hoping not only to find a cure for the disease that was driving them to extinction, but also to increase their numbers and repopulate nature. The fascinating Pink Lake. Imagine the following scenario. It is 1802 and Matthew Flinders, a British navigator and cartographer aboard HMS Investigator, lands on what is now known as Middle Island in the Research Archipelago off the south coast of Australia. It's time to start exploring. He makes his way through the dense jungle, reaches the highest peak, looks at the landscape and is surprised to see a bright pink lake. While he probably wasn't familiar with strawberry milkshakes, it's exactly what the color suggests. Later, he described the forest as pink in color, which is also pretty close. When he and his crew reached the lake, which was also very salty, they were able to resupply their entire ship with only the salt that had crystallized along the shores. According to Interesting Engineering, Flinders named Lake Hillier after a crew member who died while the ship was docked on the island. It turns out that the color of the lake is affected by supersalinity. Because the water is so salty, the most common bacteria and microscopic organisms that can survive there have a pigment in their cell membranes that is responsible for the pink color of the water, which explains why the lake is the same color. The lost city of the monkey god. Archaeologists had been hearing rumors of a city in the jungle of Honduras for years, sometimes referring to it as the White City and other times as the lost city of the monkey god. In 2015, the city went from being a myth to a reality. Legend has it that the city was founded by indigenous people fleeing the relentless conquest and slaughter brought by the Spanish conquistadors. Expeditions in the early 20th century only found hearsay, and it wasn't until 2010 that a new technology called LiDAR, light detection and ranging, arrived on the scene and progress began to be made. The skin revealed a sprawling city hidden in the jungle, and archaeologists finally made their way through the trees to find the abandoned ancient city in 2015. According to National Geographic, what they discovered was astounding. Perfectly preserved and intact stone structures, pyramids, carvings, pots and vases, thrones and tables. Ecological research has been slow, but the site has yielded some other results. This untouched paradise has been found to be home to a host of endangered plants, birds, insects and reptiles, and has been described by Conservation International as a refuge for threatened species. Oh, and Douglas Preston was part of the first expedition to discover something else. A flesh-eating disease that causes a person's nose and lips to rot first, and yes, all the explorers returned home with it. So perhaps best to leave this exploration in the hands of the professionals. Nan City. Nan Madol is a stunningly beautiful city. Therefore it is not surprising that according to Atlas Obscura, Lovecraft's vision of Relaya is inspired by Nan Madol. It is also lauded by the Smithsonian, who calls it an engineering marvel and the only thing left of the Saugelas, who were equally religious and cruel and left behind a city of stones still believed to be home to many ghosts. Creepy, yes, but archaeologists discovered something unexpected inside the ruins in 2016. The key to unlocking the mystery of how humanity evolved from simple to more complex societies, according to Science Daily. Uranium series dating allowed researchers to pinpoint the construction date of an ancient chief's tomb to between 1180 and 1200. The size of the tomb is also significant, as historians say, because they have discovered what equates to a recent evolution from a simple to a complex society ruled by a single chief on a series of islands and tribes. They still have access to something else: oral history. And why is this significant? It gives archaeologists hope that they will be able to identify the event that led the Nan Madol society to reorganize itself into a society ruled by a chief who wields shocking amounts of power, and that this will help understand how societies have evolved over time. The lost gold of the Incas. The story of the gold of the Incas begins in the 16th century when Spanish explorer and generally bad guy Francisco Pizarro demanded a ransom. If the Incas brought him a room full of gold, he would free King Atahualpa. Luckily, the Incas began to collect the ransom, but unfortunately, Pizarro was impatient and had him executed. According to National Geographic, this is where the story gets murky. The ransom was said to be hidden in a secret cave somewhere, but there is evidence that it has been discovered multiple times. The first was about 50 years later when a Spaniard named Valverde obtained money by saying that his Inca wife's family had shown him where the treasure was. He left instructions on how to find it. The guidebook and map disappeared until the 1850s. But it wasn't until 1886 that a treasure hunter named Bath Blake investigated and reported finding the treasure. He described life-size figures of humans, birds, and animals made of gold and jewels, gold vases filled with emeralds, and the most beautiful works of gold work one could imagine. Blake took what he could carry and left, intending to return. However, he disappeared on his way back to New York, and all attempts to locate him have failed. Where did it go, and will someone else be able to find the gold?